Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Samuel Adams Returns. Those anti-federalists, they did. They absolutely got it right, and this is Tom Navolis, your host. I am so delighted that you are here again with me at this program, and we're going to do something a little bit different today. I've been pretty busy in taking and trying to bring a lot more of the founding sermons to the front, and had to get caught up on a number of things with that. So today is going to be kind of like a free-form Saturday, if you will. We're going to take and just kind of jump all over the map with some continuity built into it. I want to take and kind of go through a process that I see out there a lot on all of those that may be watching this program on YouTube, or I'm not on the other forms of video yet, but right now, if you take and do what all the other people ask you to do when you watch a YouTube video is, what is that? Click the like, or no, subscribe, and then click like, or whichever way you do it, or somebody else says it, because I just want to ask you to share as much as you can with others the opportunity to hear the content for this program. And in the YouTube, as well as right there, SamuelAdamsReturns.net, is that foundational sermons. Those founding sermons are there at the website, and that is also incorporated into the channel on YouTube. For those sermons, I do not take in, you'll not see my smiling face on those. What we decided to do is try to record them in audio only, put some background information on the video component of it, but you can always just go and get the podcast at SamuelAdamsReturns.net. But if you're interested in how the sermons take and get an intro and an exit and all of that, I would encourage you to go to the Samuel Adams Returns channel and watch / listen to the sermons there. They're interesting. They're interesting in one point that I'm going to bring up in the second segment is, why did I resign from the Geauga County Mental Health Board? I am going to get into that in more detail than I even gave to the commissioners in my resignation letter. I just didn't quit. I actually wrote a resignation letter that I may make fully public at some point, but that we'll get into it. We'll get into it in the second segment, so stand by for that, because there's some things that I'm seeing in the media, and what I'm learning from those sermons is absolutely pertinent, is critical to understanding how mental health has taken and become the destruction, part of the destruction of the whole structure that we have going on in America today. The pieces that I do want to cover today, there's a lot of different good reading out there, and the idea around doing these sermons is to show that our founding fathers in reality had no disconnect between God and governance. They did have not a separation, but a distinguished authority basis in relationship to the functions of government, and then the functions and governing within the church. That is a whole different discussion. I think there's a lot of good work done on that. I'll always refer you to work that Doug Wilson has done, and work that a number of others have done as well. So we kind of talk about that, and in the last sermon that I just put up this week, which is a very interesting sermon, is where a Dr. Samuel Cooper goes through and was asked to preach before John Hancock the Senate, House of Representatives, and the judiciary of Massachusetts in 1780, because that was the launch, that was the inauguration of the Massachusetts Constitution. And in that, he gives a clear quantification of what that means to understand the formation of government, and to the extent that, as I have in my title of my primary book at this point, is From Covenant to the Present Constitution, because those during that founding era absolutely believed that a constitution, or a government that is established by the sovereigns, being we the people, is a covenant between we the people, those who we elect into office, and those who we elect into office to God, and God with all, including we the people. So it's like a three-stage covenant, if you will, and we can get into covenant at some time. If not, check out the first couple chapters of the book From Covenant to the Present Constitution, because that is where I cover that in detail. But talking about books, one book that I want to promote today, I'm going to show it to you on screen, but I will also, there's the picture for you on the radio and on the podcast. I'm actually putting up a picture in front of my smiling face that is the cover of the book. And this book is titled Church and State, which we were just talking about, How the Left Used the Church to Conquer America. Now, this is very interesting because it is a mix of denominational pastors, and I got to tell you, all of them kind of talk from a truly founding Reformed perspective. One of the authors in here is my good friend, Dr. Mike Spalding, who we always mention in the second segment, third segment with all the Soaring Eagle radio and that. But this has this is the cover as I hold it up. I know that it's hard to see there, but those that are on the YouTube and watching it can see the actual picture of the cover. But the authors in here are Pastor Greg Locke, Dr. Michael Brown, Dennis McAllister, Pastor Kerry Gordon, Jeff Dornick, J.D. Rucker, Pastor Ken Peters, Dr. Robert Oscar Lopez, Dr. Mike Spalding, Pastor Sam Jones, and Dustin Faulkner. Now, I've met several of these gentlemen in person at a conference that I spoke at, and I look forward to meeting them again this year at that same conference. The interesting piece is that these guys really put it together well, and they put it together in just a few short months. And let's see, I'm done a lot, but going into the table of contents, statism is the religion of the evangelical left, Dr. Mike Spalding. So as I have done a lot, is talk about the various churches and the pulpits of these guys too, and they're pastors and doctors in theology and all of that. So I feel in good company. The cult of evangelicalism. That's a real interesting chapter, is the cult of evangelicalism. These guys don't pull any punches. I mean, they if you think I punch in the nose, these guys not just do a punch in the nose, but follow up with a nice left hook that should have the evangelical world's head spinning. The Gospel Coalition, Phoenix of the Third Way. That's very interesting, because I've spoken about a number of the pastors who are in the Gospel Coalition, including one of the major pastors here in Northeast Ohio. The rot at the seminaries. And you've heard me talk about the seminaries being the cemeteries so often. Sexual identity and the church. We have a lot of things that are going on in the church, and where they're accepting all of the sins of Sodom and Gomorrah within in the church. The marginalization of the American Holocaust. That's talking about abortion. That's our Holocaust. Okay. How can a Christian vote Democrat? Great question. I've never been able to figure that one out. The one reason Christians cannot vote Democrat. Okay, following up on that one. Constitutionalism and Christianity in these United States. You know, that's right where I speak to and at a lot. Pietism and Romans 13. I've spoken a lot about that, and I will be, I think it's on, February 16th with the Lake County Liberty Coalition. I will be talking about the lesser magistrate. And that lesser magistrate, I have some very interesting new research that even takes it as our founders did. What does it mean to go from the magistrate to the individual in that respect? Closed for business. How COVID-19 has destroyed the local church. Critical. And this is even in states where churches are supposed to be somewhat open, is this whole masking insanity, and then the evangelical churches that require people to wear masks. Let me make that clear. They require people to wear masks instead of giving them a God-given freedom of choice as to what they will do around that. And then this is a battle for the soul of America. Great book, a lot of information in there, and pretty much consumed this whole first section just on talking about that book. Those are all topics that you can find the various resources and over 5 years of discussion that I've had on those topics here at this program at SamuelAdamsReturns.net. Yes, there it is. You on YouTube, like it and subscribe and then share it. And please share the podcast as well. And those that receive the newsletter, please get other people to sign up for that newsletter also. So that is one of the many books that is recent, and this is across a number of different denominations. This is anything from some Reformed Baptist to some Pentecostal to some Calvary Chapel and so on. So this is a spectrum, and even taking a hard look at those that would fall into evangelicalism from a broad definition are saying, wait a minute, what's going on out there, and what does that mean from the cultural war? What does that mean in relationship to that which we're dealing with right now, especially with the evil that is sitting in the White House and the whole administration, and internationally pronouncing evil in the name of the United States of America? Well, that's interesting stuff. I think that I saw an article. I'm stumbling a little bit because I can't remember where I saw the article, but I just saw an article recently where the left's heads, and that's major plural, that's heads, exploded because some pastors are identifying Kamala, I think that's it, Kamala Harris, as none other than Jezebel. Well, if you recall, even before these two were frauded into the highest seats in this nation, I had said that we're looking at Ahab and Jezebel. And the reason you can say that is if you understand not just the political perspective of Ahab and Jezebel, but the moral or immoral convictions of Ahab and Jezebel. The parallelisms are deep, wide. Come on. Just take a piece of paper, put a line down the middle of it, go Ahab, Jezebel on the one side, and go Biden, Harris on the other side, and you can start seeing these things just line up all the way down. And that leads to the destruction of America, which Sam Adams and the Anti-Federalists predicted if we didn't have a moral and virtuous people. So come on back in the next segment because I'm going to give you a little honest approach on why I left the Mental Health Board. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to this second segment of Samuel Adams Returns. Those Anti-Federalists did get it right. This is Tom Navolis, your host, just in case I forgot it in the first segment. And I'm glad you're back. And as we always do, please take a good, hard look at what is going on at Liberty Works. What? Liberty Works. LWRN.net, Liberty Works Radio Network, where Liberty works for you. It was, I got so much going on in my brain right now that I was, sorry guys, I had a little bit of slip up there. The folks there are doing a great job. We need to ask you to continue to look for that donate button right on the home page so that you can donate there and sign up for the newsletters as well to see what is happening daily on the live programming in the afternoons in particular. And I do thank everybody for joining us here on our 3 time slots where we are at on Eastern Time, 1 a.m. Eastern on Friday night. That gives or Saturday morning rather, 1 a.m. Saturday morning, where it does give everybody there on the West Coast an opportunity to listen Friday night at 10 p.m. And then again at 9 a.m. Saturday morning and 7 p.m. Saturday morning or Saturday afternoon. Whew. Yeah, I think I need more coffee. But you know what? Go ahead and look at all the hosts and hostesses there at Liberty Works Radio Network. You'll see what time slots I am at. And if you've signed up for the newsletter as well, I always have in the newsletter what time slots that the program will be broadcasting. So with that, I said we were going to talk a little bit about why I really resigned from the Mental Health Board. But I have to set the premise for you that the reason I left the Mental Health Board really starts about, well, let's go here. Let me see. About 1847, 1848, just as old Karl Marx was taken in writing his manifesto, publishing it, and all of that. It gets into this whole thing that their education started to be corrupted right there in that period of time. What we have and what I'm taken from is my handy dandy notes on the constitutional classes that I have the ability to facilitate for you if you're interested, is from Dr. Glenn Kimber on the Healing of America series. And this is from the 3rd seminar. There's 4 seminars included in that. And this one is the attacks on the Charter of Freedom. And in that, what we have going on is that in education, the McGuffey Readers came out. They were a primer, if you will, on helping kids learn to read, and not only that, learn morality, learn virtue, learn all of those key elements of self-governing in a godly manner. And then how did that translate into governing, the ability to govern within your family, self-govern, and then the extensibility of that into the rest of the foundation of the nation. The pieces that were happening were now, there was a new cycle of education that emerged around 1847. It was called an experimental or exploratory implementation of many concepts and policies which had been rejected by the founders because they were not considered sound. But the one that was bringing them forward and set up the crusade to do so was none other than Horace Mann. Horace Mann was an advocate for the ideas that the authority and responsibility of education should be shifted from the parents to the state. He was definitely he was definitely what we would call now a globalist, but he was a humanist. He was a humanist. You have to understand that. Horace Mann stated further that what the church has been for medieval man, the public school must become for democratic and rational man. God will be replaced by the concept of the public good. The common schools shall create a more far-seeing intelligence and a pure morality than has ever existed among the communities of men. Horace Mann really promoted this crazy educational philosophy and convinced a lot of parents that that was the correct or the right way to go. He also said he wanted a new religion with the state as its true church and education as its Messiah. This came out of the Messianic Charter of Education by Rousseau J. Rushdoony. He wrote about that and the quote that came directly from Horace Mann. The whole concept that we're dealing with here is secular humanism. And we can go into that, but I'm not going to take you through all of the key points on that. But you have to understand that out of what happened during that period of time, the sciences, pseudoscience, the fake, I call fake sciences, because they still have not done anything to help real science, came out, was psychology out of psychiatry, as well as the whole thing on sociology. So very, very interesting. But there's a version of humanism that came to America, and it was enthusiastically embraced in some different ways by Jefferson, Franklin, and Washington, and many of the other founders. People didn't realize that. However, this new view of humanism, as embraced by Horace Mann, put the emphasis on physical pleasure rather than merely happiness. Whereas our founders are looking at that break, and that's where we talk about, and I've talked to you about Unitarianism before and what happened in the churches during the founding era, as well as early as like 1750, where there was a break and a move. So secular humanism teaches that there is no creator, there are no inalienable rights, there is no fixed standard of morality, there is no divine purpose to life, man has no soul, man has no responsibility to any supreme being for the way he treats his fellow men, there is no future life, meaning there's no heaven or hell, and there is no divine judgment. So the secular humanism has matured over the many, many years and is, quite frankly and simply, the religion of psychology. And when we take and we look at everything that is happening within psychology, within our school systems, with social emotional learning being pressed in, and how school districts are now asking mental health boards to help them implement those pieces. When we look at kids being confused as to what bathroom to use, whether they're a boy or a girl, whether they should change from a boy or a girl to a girl or a boy. What are you today? All of these different confusions fall in the mark of what we're seeing here, and excuse my page flipping, with this whole idea of secular humanism. And so the time I spent on the mental health board, when I originally went there, I thought that I was going to be able to make a difference in how we were able to look at the different agencies, to look at the different programs, and then to be able to fund those programs that were best, that would have the ability to really help people. And I was hoping to have a Christian influence in that board in some way, that we would be able to see if we could get some kind of Christian counseling, funded within the concept of the board. Well, quite frankly, the operations of the mental health boards in the state of Ohio function based on Ohio Revised Code and Ohio Administrative Code. and that each board is an independent entity within within that county, and it has members that are appointed by the commissioners and members that are appointed by the state board of mental health to try and so-called balance the processes on there to ensure that what is the codified directive of the mental health board would be able to best serve the community. The mental health board is, like many of the codified boards in Ohio, come from your tax dollars. They come from property taxes, levies, and all of that. And that is the only money that the board has any real direct influence. I should mention also that the boards have a director that is hired and chosen and hired by the board and supposed to be accountable to the board and managed by the board. Well, it was a fight for my first year and a half, almost 2 years on the board, to take and bring some sensibility to how we bring accountability of the director. It was a large fight on trying to not make him the largest paid double dipper in the county, as well as I was able to stop a contract from going into play where he would steal, and my word is that strong, he was going to steal the public trust. He wanted the intellectual property that he participated in developing, which we know that anybody that's been in business, in corporate life, and even in public service knows that intellectual property belongs to the people and belongs to that entity or business that would hire someone, unless it was in business it was contracted differently. So those are the primary things. But other than that, when it came to agencies, the taxpayer dollars that are used out of the almost $4 million that are property taxpayer dollars, is used for agencies as a small portion of their financing, because the agencies are contracted into the county. They're not part of county structure. They're really nonprofit businesses that are publicly funded, okay? And that means they're funded not only by your taxpayer dollar, they're funded by grants, both federal and state grants. The problem with this is that these agencies, none of them function from a biblical perspective. Every one of them is part of the secular humanism that I just described, but that's psychology. When I attempted to take, and we may carry this over into the third segment, when I attempted to ask the questions, well, where are the churches? Where are the churches involved in this? It was quickly relayed to me that, oh, the churches can't participate because they can't get certified. They don't have any certified people, meaning they don't have any state or federally certified counselors that would be available or qualify them as an agency to take and get any funding and participate from any funding perspective of your taxpayer dollars. So I'm going to leave it right there for a minute, but let's just say that as we carry this into the next segment, that it's secular humanism that is codified. That means that it's in the Ohio Revised Code and the Ohio Administrative Code in total. That means the religion of humanism is predominant in government to the extent that nothing else can come in and fight through those barriers. Sam Adams didn't like that. That wasn't something that the founders intended, and the Anti-Federalists, in fact, warned that these things could happen, to the destruction not only of the family, but of the nation in a larger way. Come on back. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to this third segment of Samuel Adams Returns. Those Anti-Federalists got it right. This is Tom Navolis, your host, and welcome back, all my soaring eagle friends. Yes, you are. And whoa, you're just screaming eagles out there, and that's what we all want to be. You know, in the name of Jesus, we want to be those screaming eagles as He lifts us up, as with wings of eagles. I was talking to catch you up a little bit. If you were in the first segment, you got kind of cut out in the second segment, but welcome back for the third segment. And everybody, welcome back. We were talking about why I left the mental health board, and I covered quite a few things. But Kathy asked during the break, she was going, oh, wow, that Horace Mann, you know, how did it take all these, you know, over 100 years to take and bring us to the point that now that destruction that Horace Mann began in 1847 has come to the level of fruition that it has? Well, my simple answer to that is twofold. The first fold is that I'd like to just step back a moment again to the third book, the third seminar in the series of the Healing of America, and touch again not just from what Horace Mann, with the emphasis on physical pleasure, which is secular humanism, and that's why we have the pedophiles aren't being charged the way that they should be charged at the highest levels in our government, nor are we seeing any pushback on all of the flagrantly sinful sodomy and confusions. There's no moral, because there is no morality. Remember, I said in this list of human secularism, no creator, no inalienable rights. That means your rights don't come from God, they come from government. There is no fixed standard of morality, whereas we say, and our founders said, that morality, and it's in the sermons, just to give you an uptick again, go look at those sermons, SamuelAdamsReturns.net, and go look at those foundational sermons, because it is full that the only way you can have good leadership and a happy society is by having morality as a part of it. So, you know, man has no responsibility to a supreme being, and so on. So, you know, Horace Mann was all about the pleasures of life and these indulgences, no different than what happened in ancient Greece and Rome, and, you know, all of the orgies and everything like that that was there. The rest of it came in answering Kathy's question. And real quick, before I continue on with my reason for leaving the mental health board, is that John Dewey was not just a person for the Dewey Decimal System that, you know, created a mechanism for cataloging libraries, but he was the first, get us, first president of the American Humanist Association. He signed the Humanist Manifesto, consenting to the false principles it contained. These principles included atheism, evolution, society-based values. That's why we're seeing all this stuff all over the map. Everything that we would biblically call immorality is a society-based values, which then leads to what he accepted as immorality and the acceptability of euthanasia and suicide. That's all in the original Humanist Manifesto. Go check it out for yourself. So John Dewey, who became that key educator, and with all his atheistic beliefs, he declared, here's a declaration: faith in the prayer hearing God is an unapproved and outmoded faith. There is no God and there is no soul. Hence, there are no needs for the props of traditional religion. With dogma and creed excluded, the immutable truth is also dead and buried. There is no room for fixed natural law or moral absolutes. John Dewey, Soul Searching, Teacher's Magazine, September 1933. So when we take and we put together those perspectives of Horace Mann, and then we take a look and we put together then what John Dewey, we look at humanism and how that then is pushed into the psychology. And then as we look at what's happening with social emotional learning, that is the undergirding, that is the foundational rationale for me leaving part of it. I have to say, there's more obviously, but we can't get into it all. But that's a foundational rationale for leaving the board. And the rest of the reason is, as I was explaining, and you'll have to go listen to the second segment, is that everything that the mental health board does, everything that the various other taxing authority boards do, and now I think it happens since somewhere around the 90s that the Board of Education is no longer locally controlled. You have this Board of Education, but the majority of the superintendents of schools will take their directive from the state board, and the state board, under the guise of standards, is now the determining factor of what happens at the local level. So even when it comes to local boards of education, those people that you elect to that board have their hands tied by what has become a bureaucratic nightmare, as well as what's been codified. And if you look at that, it's not worse than that in education. In the state of Ohio, it's actually amended into the state constitution. So when we look at the destruction of secular humanism on our children, and you add on top of that the mechanisms, I didn't even get into the articles here, but there's a very, very interesting article that I was going to bring up, and I'll just kind of highlight it, is that amid the rise in child self-harm, suicidally, alcohol deaths, Boris appoints mental health ambassador, and that's in England. But we have the same thing going on here in the United States. We have an increase, especially with this Chi-Com flu debacle, and that really set me off because of some of the board members trying to press their fears onto myself and other board members when we know that the Chi-Com flu is not what the bureaucratic health directors, and especially now with this abomination, abomination foul, F-A-U-X, faux administration at the federal level is taking and pushing this and using this to take in and be harmful. So when I see young children, 4, 5, 6, at that age category, wearing a muzzle on their face, that's child abuse. And then when we see that happening within the context of schools and the isolation that has happened because of all of this, there has been documented at the state level, at the county level, increases in alcohol abuse, increases in opiate abuse, returns to that. And this is the insanity of the monies going to these agencies, because they bring no hope. You have to understand, because of the way that it's all written in code and the way that they have to function in the Ohio State Code, I had no purpose on that board. I could not find a way to bring in any Christian counseling. I could not find a way that it would allow for monies to go to churches to provide that real solution, that real hope, that basis of Christian counseling and the truth of biblical truth of Jesus Christ. Instead, what we have is that every state and the state of Ohio, every nation has taken and put secular humanism as the state religion. Now, it was originally that with the first 13 states, they did take, and some chose that they would have a particular denomination as their core religion in that state. But even as you read, and you go read Dr. Cooper's sermon or listen to me delivering that sermon, you'll find that the state of Massachusetts said, no, we're not even going to do that. And you have to understand, state of Massachusetts was the heart of the Puritan doctrine, the whole heart of what used to be a pure congregational church. Now they're as corrupt as all get out. But the bottom line is that is where people found hope. That's where they found truth. And you're not going to find that through these agencies that are being paid, developing all of these solutions for people that have nothing to do with God. They have everything to do with all that I already read to you about what Horace Mann laid out from the whole perspective of what secular humanism is, and that it's been implemented. And again, answering Kathy's question, I need to slow down a minute because I'm really, really burned at the core that we've allowed this to happen. The church has allowed it to happen. That's why I think, once again, I will go the Church and State, the book, and how the left used the church to conquer America. Because we can go through, and I have gone through with you a number of times on the history of that happening, and the destruction, especially through the major denominations. Excuse me while I take a sip of my coffee. But the point that needs to drive home, as I will say that I did honestly say in my resignation letter that I found several key points of how the board operated and how it is codified, how it sees the money flowing, rubber stamps money that comes from the federal and the state level, which is all your taxpayer money anyway. And I found them immoral. They are not moral. And then the way that the board is allowing programs and supporting social emotional learning is immoral, totally destructive to families and to our youth. And it doesn't have to be medically proven. It has to stand on a moral ground. But there is no morality within the mental health board. There are individuals that are very moral individuals. I would say there's several individuals that are Christians. And other than that, the rest of the people are secular humanists. Although they may have that covering, and as Horace Mann even said, they have a traditional perspective of what religion may be, because heck, secular humanism being a religion, it has some kind of structure around it as well. So with that, I just want to summarize it is that any changes that have to be made within the mental health boards and the real accountability of the directors of the mental health boards, any accountability of the agencies has to be done at the state level, and we have to see changes in the Ohio Revised Code and the Ohio Administrative Code. I don't know what's in your states, but you may need to take a hard look at what's going on, because that's a big push from our governor is a mental health. It's a big push at the federal level, and just watch. I'm making I'm not a prophet, but I will, by observation, reading, and understanding, say that that is a lot of what the abomination of faux administration is going to be utilizing as a tool against Christianity, Trump voters, conservatives, so on and so forth, because it has been used as that before. There's an article in what I posted in the promo around the truth czar that is coming into play. So stand by, buckle up, get ready, and fight for liberty in the way that Sam Adams and the Anti-Federalists did. Come on back next week, and we may be talking about the doctrine of the lesser magistrate again with all that new information.